Welcome to the Nature Fury Unleashed YouTube channel.
Oh my god!
At 12:50 p.m. local time on March 28, 2025, an earthquake of staggering magnitude struck Myanmar, sending powerful tremors across Southeast Asia. The 7.7 magnitude quake, with its epicenter near Mandalay, carved a path of destruction, reducing homes to rubble, toppling buildings, and shaking the very core of multiple nations. As the dust settled, the extent of the devastation became horrifyingly clear. Lives lost, families torn apart, and cities forever changed. This was not just another earthquake, it was a moment of terror felt by millions. A catastrophe that unfolded in real time as the world watched. Tremors that stretched across borders. Myanmar has a history of seismic activity, but few could have anticipated the sheer force of this quake. The epicenter, located just outside Mandalay, was relatively shallow, only 10 kilometers below the Earth's surface. This depth made the shaking even more intense, amplifying the destruction and expanding its reach. Within seconds, buildings swayed violently, roads cracked open, and terrified residents fled into the streets. The sound of crumbling concrete and shattered glass filled the air. Temples and pagodas, some standing for centuries, collapsed under the unrelenting force of nature. Across the border in Thailand, Bangkok felt the tremors too. People working in high-rise buildings panicked as the structures oscillated unnervingly. Then, disaster struck. A 30-story building under construction in the city collapsed entirely, trapping dozens beneath the rubble. In Myanmar alone, at least 144 people were confirmed dead in the immediate aftermath, with more than 700 injured. Hospitals overflowed with the wounded, and rescue workers scrambled to save those still trapped. For many, the earthquake hit without warning. In villages near the epicenter, entire communities were leveled, homes reduced to heaps of broken bricks and splintered wood. Families who had been eating lunch together just moments before were now desperately searching for missing loved ones. Thailand, too, bore the brunt of the disaster. The collapsed high-rise in Bangkok became a grim symbol of the quake's ferocity. At least 8 people were confirmed dead at the site, while 43 others were still missing. Bangladesh, India, and even parts of China also felt the tremors. In Dhaka, Bangladesh's capital, buildings shook violently, causing widespread panic. People ran into the streets, fearing the worst. In India's northeastern states, aftershocks rattled nerves but left relatively minor damage. What made this disaster even more tragic was Myanmar's already unstable situation. The country, grappling with ongoing civil conflict, lacked the infrastructure and resources to mount an immediate large-scale response. Roads were already in poor condition before the quake. Now many were completely impassable. Bridges had collapsed, cutting off entire towns from aid. The ruling military junta declared a state of emergency, yet humanitarian groups feared that aid would be slow or even blocked in some areas due to political tensions. Myanmar's opposition government, operating in exile, issued a desperate plea for international assistance, urging relief organizations to bypass military restrictions and deliver help directly to those in need. Rescue workers faced an almost impossible task. The first 72 hours after a major earthquake are critical. The chances of survival drop sharply after that. In Mandalay, emergency teams work tirelessly, combing through debris, listening for faint cries of survivors. Dogs sniff through the rubble, their handlers praying for any sign of life. Thailand deployed hundreds of emergency responders to Bangkok's collapsed building, hoping to find survivors buried beneath tons of concrete. Heavy machinery clawed through the wreckage as rescuers, some using only their hands, pulled people to safety. The international community quickly responded. Aid organizations mobilized, sending supplies, medical teams, and search and rescue units. China, India, and ASEAN countries pledged support, though logistical challenges slowed efforts. The United Nations called for immediate humanitarian assistance, warning that the number of casualties could rise dramatically if aid did not reach the hardest hit areas in time. The initial earthquake was only the beginning. Hours later, powerful aftershocks rippled through the region, further destabilizing already weakened structures. In Mandalay, residents refused to re-enter their homes, fearing they might collapse at any moment. Makeshift camps sprang up in open spaces where families huddled together, bracing for more tremors. In Bangkok, structural engineers raced to assess damage across the city, ordering evacuations of unstable buildings. Authorities feared another collapse, potentially endangering even more lives. Adding to the chaos were widespread power outages and disruptions to communication networks. In the worst-hit areas of Myanmar, entire neighborhoods were plunged into darkness, leaving survivors cut off from the outside world. The earthquake's reach extended far beyond Myanmar's borders. In Bangladesh, buildings swayed ominously in Dhaka and Chittagong, sending people fleeing into the streets. Though structural damage was limited, the psychological impact was profound. Many feared another catastrophic quake might follow. In India's Assam and Manipur states, tremors shook homes and offices, but no major casualties were reported. However, in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, authorities briefly issued a tsunami warning, fearing that the quake's energy might trigger dangerous waves. China, too, felt the shaking in its southwestern provinces. In Yunnan, residents described a surreal experience, the ground trembling beneath them as if alive. Though the damage was minimal, the fear lingered.
Oh my god, ping pong. รู้จักค่ะ
As the days passed, the world began to grasp the full scale of the disaster. Myanmar's already fragile healthcare system was stretched beyond its limits. Makeshift medical tents were set up to treat the injured, but doctors lacked basic supplies. Aid workers described scenes of unimaginable suffering. Children crying for missing parents, the elderly left homeless, entire families sleeping in the open with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Food and clean water became scarce, and the threat of disease loomed large. For Thailand, the focus remained on the collapsed high-rise in Bangkok. Families gathered near the site, clinging to the hope that their missing loved ones might still be alive. Meanwhile, authorities launched investigations into the building's structural integrity, raising concerns that poor construction practices may have contributed to its failure. This earthquake was not just a disaster, it was a wake-up call. Myanmar, Thailand, and neighbouring countries sit on active fault lines, yet preparedness remains inadequate. Poor building regulations, lack of early warning systems, and slow emergency responses all contributed to the high death toll. Scientists warned that this may not be the last major earthquake in the region. The complex tectonic activity beneath Southeast Asia means that powerful quakes are always a possibility. The question is not if another will occur, but when. Governments across the region now face urgent questions. How can they improve earthquake preparedness? Are existing buildings safe? What steps can be taken to minimize loss of life in future disasters?
Oh my god!
地震！哎呦我操！Oh my god！ 是人掉下来了吗 ？Oh my god！
哦，挺软的，哦，唱歌。唱歌你要把那多嘞。
As rescue efforts continued and aftershocks rattled nerves, one thing became clear. This was a tragedy that would not be forgotten. Myanmar mourned its dead. Thailand grappled with its own losses. And millions across Southeast Asia were left shaken, both physically and emotionally. The world too watched in shock and sorrow. From disaster comes resilience. And in the aftermath of this catastrophe, communities would rebuild. But for those who lived through the 7.7 magnitude earthquake of March 28, 2025, life would never be the same. The ground may have stopped shaking, but the echoes of this disaster will be felt for years to come.
Earthquake. Earthquake.